So welcome back to Coventry City Top 10 series. Today I'm doing top 10 players of all time. That's actually really difficult. It turns out I'm quite a fan of flair. So, in the surprisingly high voice of Mo Cognac, let's do this. So, as always, we're going to start with Honourable Mentions. So that's players that haven't got into the list. It might be because they were loan players, or obviously just players that missed out, only just as well, some of them. So here's my list. We've got David Phillips, Cyril Regis, Trevor Peake, David Bennett, Tony Sheridan. Tony Sheridan, I hear you ask? I know, that's a really random one, but what a gorgeous left foot he had. Talking of gorgeous left feet, Paul Cook, Stuart Robson, Isaias, Neil Lamptey, Gary McAllister. I know, you're thinking, how the hell is he not in the top 10? Mustafa Hadji, Mo Cognac, Callum Davenport, Phil Babb, Gary Breen, Gary McSheffrey, David Thompson, Adam Armstrong, Mark McNulty, and of course most recently Frankie Dabo, and also Lee Jenkinson. Don't look at me like that, Lee Jenkinson. I was there at Carrow Road when he did this.
Looking for Dublin. Flicks it on nicely. A chance here for... Oh, superbly struck.
I was there. Every home reserve game, paying my 50p and waving my A4 sheet of paper that had the team sheet on, shouting, "Jenko, do your trick!" and cheering every time he did. I was there begging that he would do that trick live on Sky, and he did it just for me. At Old Trafford, he did his trick past Gary Neville, and Martin Tyler said, and I quote, "Oh, that was a lovely trick." I was also there when he made his debut against Arsenal and let the ball roll under his foot and out for a throw-in. But you know, hey, Lee Jenkinson, come on. Kevin Drinkle as well. I know, there's a random one. Kevin Drinkle, overhead kick on his debut against Grimsby Town, and of course that goal against Villa, live on television, and I mean proper television, not Sky, terrestrial ITV television against Villa, when he scored seconds after coming on as a substitute. Anyway, let's get on with the top 10. In 10th place, and I guarantee on everyone's top 10 list, if you were old enough to see him play, is, well, Mr. Coventry City. The guy who's played 456,242 times, I think. Yeah, that's right. Also coached the side, and of course is Clive Eakin's sidekick on Coventry and Warwickshire Radio, Steve Ogrizovic. Number 9, one of the first players I saw play, and in fact he was influential in the first game I saw against Oxford United at home. Always a 7 or 8 out of 10. Always gave everything for the cause, really good right winger, nippy player, but also, I tell you what, just knew where the goal was. If he had a one-on-one, he scored every time. I mean, the only time he didn't do it was in the cup final. But every time he put the ball in the back of the net if he was through on goal, and that of course is the postman himself, Mickey Ginn. Also my postman at Brighton when we lived in Brighton on Dunsmore. There you go. But Mickey Ginn, fantastic player, played brilliantly in the cup final. What a game he had in the cup final, and just a gem of a player. Number 8 is a player who's played for Coventry City a few times actually, and both times been incredibly successful. I think a player who really brought him on his first time was Dennis Wise. When Dennis Wise was in the team, it made this midfielder just become that little bit better. It gave him that extra spark. He seemed to learn a lot off him. You know who I'm talking about. I'm talking, of course, about Michael Doyle. I do think he was incredibly influential, obviously in getting us to where we are now. But, you know, if you think about him in that Notts County game, he was fantastic and just the player we needed. And we knew after that it was going to get more difficult for him. But the fact that he gave so much for the cause, scored some absolutely cracking goals, of course. That incredible. Yeah, Michael Doyle is number 8. Number 7. This guy was just one of my all-time favourite players because he was able to just run at pace. He scared a lot of defenders. And again, like I said about Mickey Ginn, just knew where the goal was. Scored a lot of good goals for us. Scored goals from all over the pitch. Scored in some really important games, and went on to become incredibly successful in other teams, and he's actually a successful pundit now. That is Kevin Gallagher. He is my number 7. Number 6. Again, I imagine this guy will be in a lot of your top 10 lists. Dion Dublin. I mean, what more can you say? The presence of the man was just incredible from the very moment he signed, and he was a big signing at the time, wasn't he? £2 million. Phil Neal signed him from Man U, and of course he'd been to Man U and actually I think would have been successful there, but broke his leg, hadn't he? And I mean, what a player, what an incredible signing when you look back now and think what he did for this club in both attack and defence. Remember, he was a superb defender, but just if you watch some of the goals, I mean, literally unplayable in the box. And you know, when you think that ball was lifted in by McAllister every time, Dublin would have been there. And some of those headers he scored were insane. The distance he was out and the connection he made. But just bringing others into play. You know, one of those players you're desperate to have. You know, Lukaku does it now. Well, I say Lukaku for Chelsea, probably not for long. But does it now, and just being able to hold up and bring other people into play. I've never known anyone like that since Coventry City. So yeah, Dion Dublin is number 6. Number 5, a guy who would have a top 10 goal list all on his own, Noel Whelan. I mean, we see, you look on YouTube now, if you weren't lucky enough to see him, just obviously YouTube Noel Whelan goals for Coventry City, and it's like a goal of the season contender every goal pretty much, isn't it? You know, the goal against Southampton, my favourite goal in terms of the quality of all time was the one away at Wimbledon. Just incredible technique. But this brilliant goal at Leicester, wasn't there? But there's all sorts he scored, and again it was his ability with the ball. You know, you couldn't get the ball off him. He was strong, especially when he kicked a bus stop, didn't he? Window in Leamington, that was pretty strong. But now, I mean, all round, fantastic player. You'd wish for someone like that in our side now, wouldn't you? So Noel Whelan is number 5. Top 4. Yeah, I mean, this was tricky because these 4, you know, I love them all, but actually ordering them so, you know, 4, 3, 2, 1 is hard. But number 4 is going to be Mr. Pace himself, Darren Huckabee. Obviously, everyone remembers the goal he scored, but I just remember from the very first moment. I think it was Newcastle and Villa, especially against Villa, against Southgate. I think he gave him an absolute torrid time, and it was just sheer pace. But it shows with Huckabee, it's not just sheer pace. Yeah, he had that pace, but also he knew how to finish. You know, it's all well and good if you've got pace, but if you don't know what you're doing with it at the end, and we found that, haven't we, ourselves, you've got to have the end product. And he did. He scored some phenomenal goals. I mean, I love the goal against Everton when Froggatt scored that screamer. That goal against Everton was sublime. The first touch and the finish, live on Sky as well. Obviously, the Man U game. Liverpool people will talk about quite rightfully. Leeds United, he scored an absolute beaut there when I think it was Gary Kelly left for dead, and Gary Kelly was insanely good. You know, if someone like that was in our side now, your bums on seats, you know. So Darren Huckabee, sheer pace, absolutely frightened teams, you know. And I think, and we're going to say saying about a player in a minute, got a standing ovation at Anfield, you know, for some of his goals. And when you're getting a standing ovation from the Kop, you know something's right, don't you? So Darren Huckabee, who of course is loved by a lot of clubs because pretty much everywhere he went, he was a danger. So he's got a big fan base, Hooks. So well done, you're 4th place, mate. Darren Huckabee, number 4. Number 3, I mean, this is an emotional one for me because the guy, it's hard because I think when you're doing your top 3, you'd automatically say you want to pick players who play for the team for at least 3 or 4 years. it's fair to say our current squad all played longer than this guy did for Cov City. Have all played longer than that. So you could argue that he shouldn't perhaps be in the top 3, but the influence he had on the team for one season of being here is just incredible, remarkable, considering his age. He was bought as a youngster for £6 million. Imagine that price tag then on a young lad's shoulders from Wolves. And of course it's the main man, Robbie Keane. The reason this guy's got to be there is just his sheer influence on the team for that one season. I don't think I've seen an influence like that in one season from one player. He scored so many incredible goals. Obviously we know the one at Arsenal. The 2 on his debut were lovely. The goal against Villa is really memorable, but just his ability with the ball, his balance, his touch, and again I mentioned it before, his presence, isn't it? And his presence up front, which of course, we know he went on to bigger and better things, really. He went on to Inter Milan, but after that, obviously with Tottenham, Leeds, he just was a stunning player, and I was so proud that he signed for us. I remember when we signed him, I just couldn't believe we'd signed him because I knew how good he was at Wolves. But of course, you never know how he's going to be in the Premier League. And that team was called the Entertainers, and you can see why. He was the lead of that. Just what an influence. Imagine we had a player like that now. I mean, seeing all the children now wearing Cov City kits is wonderful. I'm so pleased, and Mark Robbins deserves so much credit for bringing that back. And they're not wearing Man U and Chelsea and Man City tops. They're wearing Cov City tops now. But imagine we had someone like Keane. I mean, the buzz he would create in the city. So, yeah, for that one season, and I know it was only one season, Robbie Keane deserves to be in 3rd place. Number 2. So didn't quite make it to number 1. Could easily be number 1. Peter Unlove. Just a spark. Bought for hardly anything by John Sillett. John Sillett knew the moment he got him that he got an absolute gem. I'll never forget the first time he came on the pitch, because I think me and Dad had maybe gone down to get a drink, and we'd come back up, and I think the second half had started in the game he was on, and we hadn't realised. What we thought was Lloyd McGrath got the ball, and suddenly, with pace, went round about 3 or 4 players, and then shot. And we just thought, what is wrong with Lloydie? What's going on? And then we realised it was Nuddy, and pretty soon he scored this goal.
And a goal for the man from Bulawayo. This is Peter Unlove. Great balance, scoring well on his left foot.
And you knew then you got a player on your hands. I mean, again, like I said about Noel Whelan and Darren Huckabee earlier on, they could have a goal of the season contenders, from their goal reel. If you have a look at Unlove, the hat-trick at Anfield, again, getting a standing ovation like Huckabee did. The goal against Wimbledon at home, that strike. The goals away at Wimbledon, which were really, really important. The West Brom goal, the West Brom goal sums him up. He would be direct, he'd run at pace, he'd scare the hell out of any defenders, but again, he'd finish. There was times he didn't finish. There was times, that he made the wrong decision, like we've done a lot this season. But more often than not, he'd make the right decision. And what a phenomenal player. And it always surprised me that there wasn't more teams coming in for him, because he was that good, that special. I presumed he would go at any minute to one of the big clubs, because they knew what a gem he was. But I think from the fact that he was bought for so little and gave us so much, he deserves to be in anyone's top 10, and he's my number 2. Number 1, the reason I'm picking this guy is, to me, he was like our Paul Scholes. I think a lot of Man U fans Cantona would be there, wouldn't he? But Scholes would be definitely in their top 3 because of just his sheer ability to get the ball down and lose his markers with just the tiniest movement, the minuscule movement, something like James Maddison does nowadays. And that, for us, was David Speedie. I've never seen a player like him. He was only diminutive. He wasn't huge. He wasn't a big guy, was he? He was incredible in the air. His leap was unbelievable. He scored a hat-trick of headers against Sheffield Wednesday. And he had everything as well. He had bite. You know, do you remember he got sent off against Gary Bennett, didn't he? When he had that tussle with Gary Bennett against Sunderland. He had bite about him, he had attack, he wanted to win the ball, he wanted to win every game, he was passionate, but incredible ability. I mentioned Scholes, 360 vision. As soon as Speedy got the ball, he knew where everyone else was on the pitch. And that's something like Wayne Rooney had. Wayne Rooney had that ability to know exactly where people were on the pitch. So the moment he got it, he could ping a pass straight off, or he could just drop a shoulder and move away. And of course, his ability in front of goal. You know, he could teach Callum O'Hare a thing or two about how to lob a goalkeeper. His chips, we'll always remember Speedy's chips. But his ability to score goals from anywhere, and it's something that our current players could look at. Someone like Speedy and some of these other players we've looked at. But David Speedy, to me, was just an absolute god, an absolute legend. And of course he must be for me, because look at those players he's beaten to get to number one. It'd be great to hear your number ones. It'd be also great if you could subscribe to the channel. I'm nearly on 1,000 subscribers, so subscribe down here. Make sure you click on the link, and that'll be fantastic. You'll get all of my content straight away then. So, or even if you just want to do a top 3, and I will see you next time on Coventry City Top 10.